So, my name is Erica Ford. I'm the International Career Coach. I work in the Central Career Services office here at Cornell. My role focuses primarily on supporting international students as you all navigate the complexities and complications of the American job search. I also help any student interested in working abroad or working outside of the US. In this case, you all are studying abroad and probably planning to work here in the US while you're abroad. But I do help students interested in like third country job searching as well. Um, I've been in my role for almost 3 years. It'll be 3 years in December, and I have worked with international students since 2014. I started my career in higher ed in an international student advising office. So I've worked most of my time in higher ed as an international student advisor, and also have worked a little as an academic advisor. So that is my background. And I'm glad that you all are taking this time on a Friday evening to listen to me talk about job search strategies. There's lots going on in the world of international student immigration and employment immigration. So I have some time carved out to talk a little bit about that later on. This will be very dense as far as information is concerned. So I hope that you all have a notebook or OneNote pulled up on your computer. There are some parts that are kind of interactive later on where you'll be able to try out some of the tools. Um, and if you have questions, you're welcome to add them to the chat. I will have plenty of time at the end to take questions as well, but I could address things throughout if it's appropriate. So thank you all for commenting in the chat. I'm just going to read who is here. I won't say your name because of the recording, but sophomore in information science, hoping to learn more about what the job application process will be like for international students moving forward. A sophomore in design and environmental analysis and human ecology, image in computer science, learning some strategies of job search and sponsorship. MFS student in food science from Ecuador, hope to better understand the strategies of searching a job in the US and more in these uncertain times. First year master student in natural resources and hoping to learn more details about information about working in the US after graduation. Human informatics at Weil. I remember emailing with you earlier, looking for pointers on how to properly search for jobs considering current political climate. MS in biomedical engineering, learn more about the expected timeline from the start of job search to finding a job, and immigration related concerns to keep in mind. Sophomore majoring in economics and sociology, and to get a glimpse of the job market in the US in this political climate. Lots of in this political climate comments. So, yes. Okay, so I am just going to jump right in. If I can, here we go. Okay, so today we are covering a lot of ground. I carved out an hour and a half just because this particular workshop tends to run long for me because of all of the details. So we will talk about exploring options in the US specifically, but the principles can be applied elsewhere, I think. Ensuring that you are pursuing opportunities at good times, identifying international friendly employers, choosing your strategy, and executing your job search. So before we jump into those topics, I wanted to introduce the sort of theoretical framework, not sort of, but actual theoretical framework that career services operates by. So we essentially see the process of career development as a sort of three-stage repeated cycle over the course of your life. And at any point in your life, you can be at any of these stages. You can also revisit any point of these stages. So it generally starts with understanding yourself. What are you good at? What are the things that are valuable to you, or things that inform your career decisions? That could be assessments, that could be conversations, that could be doing your research, that could be self-reflection on things that are important to you and valuable to you. The next stage is exploring your options. That's trying to figure out what is actually out there for you. That's researching things online. That is having informational interviews with professionals in different fields. That's taking part in temporary experiences like a project team here at Cornell, or an internship or research experience to sort of try out things and see if they're a good fit. And then there's the taking action phase. That's when you're like sure of the direction you're going based on what you know about yourself and what options you understand to be available to you, and you're actually pursuing experiences. This could include pursuing internships, but often on a path that you're fairly certain about, or pursuing full-time job opportunities. So that's the practical part: submitting applications, getting your resume ready, interviewing, etc. So again, throughout your life, you can be visiting and revisiting any stage of this career development cycle. And I can say that as someone who's further along in my own career, that there have been moments where I've had to go back and self-reflect and iron out my own values and things that are important to me and take sort of a new path. So I hope that you all are thinking about where in this cycle you may be right now, knowing that it's okay to be in any phase of this cycle. Maybe you're a new undergraduate student and you're trying to decide between majors. Maybe you're an established MNG student and you're pretty sure of your direction and you just want to take action as soon as possible. Or maybe you're in between. So this presentation will focus more on the sort of second and third phases of this cycle, exploring your options and taking action. It's not really meant to help you sort of self-reflect, but we do offer appointments in career services, both in the central office and your college office, that focus more on career exploration. So if that's something that you're interested in, I encourage you to schedule one of those appointments. So let's start with exploring your options. Okay, so as international students, I like to think of your student visa as, I don't know, an anchor or a weight that you sort of carry around with you everywhere you go. And it affects it for as long as you're here in the state, at least. And it affects many of your decisions, from what you study, how you study, to employment, whether or not you can even work, what type of work you can actually do. So it's good to start from that place, having a good understanding of what your student visa actually allows you to do. So if you're looking for internships or full-time jobs, you have to get a work authorization or work permission to do those things generally, especially if they're off campus within the US. So I will share out copies of these slides with links to these important pages. The process for international student work authorization, also known as CPT or OPT if you're an F1 student, or academic training if you're a J1 student. These details can be found on the International Services website, and they're the place that you go to for clarification on the process. Are you eligible or not? What steps do you need to take? And they have pages that are dedicated to explaining eligibility requirements and the application process. I also have an event coming up, which the date will be provided later on at the end of this presentation. But it's a Q&A with one of the immigration advisors, Hurst Custodia, who works in international services. So he'll be joining me and taking questions from students about international student work authorization and other career topics. I'll also be taking a lot of questions today, but not really focused on the visa aspects, more on the search. So an example of what your student visa allows are the very clear policies around OPT employment. OPT, think of it as your usually postgraduate work permit that provides 1 to 3 years of permission to work here in the US in a job that's directly related to your major. Some students sort of think very narrowly about OPT. The jobs have to be one very specific thing, but you actually have a lot of options for your first year of OPT, not the STEM extension, but that's more limited. But I've listed here, you could do paid or unpaid experiences. Ideally, you want to be paid. You can have one employer or more employers. So maybe you do a part-time consulting role if you're in public policy with the UN Development Program, and you do a research project with a professor at Cornell. Those things would count as multiple employment options under OPT. Perhaps you decide to do something temporary, like an internship post-grad or a rotational program, or you look for a more long-term position that doesn't have an end date designated. International students can also work with staffing agencies. You can start your own business or do contract work or work for hire. So there's a lot of flexibility under OPT. And I encourage you all, especially if you're going to graduate soon, to consider, are any of these experiences, are you open to any of these experiences? And could you incorporate into your search or into your plans some of these other career paths under OPT? That's all I'll say about this, but the Q&A is October 9th from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So once you have a good grasp of what your student visa allows you to do, you want to get a sense of what's related to your major. So this is one question that a lot of international students have. There's a rule or a regulation from your student visa that the work that you do on CPT, OPT, or academic training has to be directly related to your major. But what are those options? What is directly related to your major? Well, there are several resources that you can use to help you explore those options. One that is one of my favorites is called What Can I Do with This Major? It's usually a platform that your school provides access to. They actually pay, but Cornell doesn't pay for What Can I Do with This Major? However, there's a nonprofit here in New York State that provides free access. So the link that I have embedded in the slides that you can refer to later will take you to that site with free access. And you can explore a variety of majors and the different sort of career areas that are related and employers that hire, what are the types of jobs and different resources, what's the outlook for different career paths, is it a growing field or not, etc. Then there's ChatGPT. You all know about ChatGPT, I'm sure, but it can be prompted to give you ideas about jobs that are related to your major. I won't go over ChatGPT prompting, but I'm sure many of you know more about it than I do. And then there's a site called ONET, very similar to What Can I Do with This Major, just structured differently. And there's Vault. I'll actually show some screenshots from 3 of these resources in the coming slides. But these things can help you actually identify what are specific job titles, what are the specific skills that you need for certain jobs. So that can inform what your major allows you to do, but it can also inversely inform what are the skills you need to be building while you're a student. So do you need to boost your technical coursework? Or is there something else skill-wise that you can do to make yourself more competitive? if you review these things and look at the skills list, that will give you more of a sense of what's needed. And then you want to reflect on what are the career paths for your education level. An example may be if you want to be a therapist, you probably need a master's degree. So if you're an undergrad, you may actually want to take a gap year, work a little bit, and then go on and pursue a master's or a doctorate degree to do that kind of job. So these also give you a sense of what education leads to different roles, and that's really helpful. And then is there additional coursework or training or experiences, again, that can make you more competitive? So this is an example of a Nolan student who may use what can I do with this major to explore their options. So in the what can I do with this major website, under the H's, they have a hotel, restaurant, and tourism major. I believe Cornell's Nolan major is called hospitality management. So the hotel, restaurant, and tourism section is most aligned with that particular major here. So when I go into that major, it provides this sort of grouping of different career tracks or areas that a hotel major may go into: hotel, restaurant, and tourism, events, sales and marketing, corporate administration, communications, and education. And then when I expand any of those lists, which I did the first, then it gives me a list of career paths in different areas. So maybe I want to do menu design if I'm into restaurants and sort of culinary hospitality. Or maybe I want to manage museums, or maybe I want to do hotel operations. So it kind of breaks that down into different areas that may be interesting to me, and then gives me ideas of employers who might be a good fit. So a food service provider, an amusement center or theme park, a tour operator, etc. So I like, again, that it gives you a lot of ideas. If I were to look up the same type of career path in Vault, then it gives me ideas through Vault. I like Vault for a lot of reasons, and their sort of career exploration section is pretty well organized. So they have these like guides where you can explore different topics within an industry. I didn't include all of the screenshots, but it may give you information about career outlooks for that degree. It gives you an overview of, or sorry, career path, not degree. It gives you an overview of that industry, tips and tricks for recruitment, and preparing for a job in that field. They also have extensive guides that kind of give an overview of hospitality careers in general or explore specific areas of hospitality. So travel and leisure, casinos and hotels, restaurants and food service. So if you want to get really specific, Vault guides really go deep. If you have the time to do it, that's another good resource. But if you're like, I'm limited on time, then what can I do with this major is faster. It's more direct information, and it has links that you can use to read more if you want to. Okay, so we've talked about understanding what your visa allows you to do, and then figuring out what positions are actually directly related to your major. So once you have that sense of what you're trying to do, then you can decide, like, am I looking for an internship? Am I looking for a full-time job, a contract job, a rotational program? Do I want to do some shadowing if I plan to go to medical school? Wherever you are, from undergrad all the way up to doctorate, you want to decide what is it that you're actually looking for. So that'll kind of help you find a direction. And you don't have to pick just one thing. So maybe you're an undergraduate engineering student and you have the option to do a co-op or an internship. Maybe you're in a one-year master's program and you know you'll be looking for post-grad opportunities. Figure that part out. Also reflect on when is it that you're hoping to start working, what industries and types of companies, like we looked at with the what can I do with this major? And you can also reflect on using Vault or the other resources. And then do you have preferences, for example, for location? Since we're on the East Coast, there are a lot of Cornellians who want to work in New York City or maybe Washington, D.C. There's some folks who want to work out on the West Coast or in Texas or Ohio. People have their preferences for their different reasons. So think about, do you care about location? Are you location agnostic and you're kind of open to wherever a job may take you? Having a sense of that is really helpful as well. And then you want to make sure you're recruiting really at times where you have the most options. So first you want to give yourself enough time. So one concern or challenge that I see international students facing a lot is they'll kind of put off their job search until it's like absolutely necessary to search. Or maybe they'll start searching a little bit, applying a little bit, and they're not really getting results. So they'll just kind of keep applying with no interviews, and then they'll kind of come in for help in the spring. But ideally, you want to ensure that you're engaging well with recruitment during the times that companies are most active recruiting students. So last week, we had our big career fairs for the fall. They attract the most companies and provide in-person opportunities for face-to-face interaction with reps from companies that are open to hiring international students, some that aren't as well, but that's a great chance to start engaging with recruitment. I'll cover that and more things later. But fall is a great time to take part in recruitment. There are some fields where the bulk of recruitment will happen late fall or early to mid-spring. I think of architecture and planning positions to be more spring-oriented, but then there are so many that start their recruitment process in the fall or even earlier. So as a rule of thumb, you want to give yourself 6 to 9 months or earlier to execute your job search. Believe it or not, there are some companies in consulting, for example, or finance that have been taking applications since before the semester started. So get a sense, and I'll have more suggestions for that, of when companies recruit and actually start engaging with recruitment through, well, I'll talk about how to do that. So you want to take a step back and think, after doing some research with some of the tools and resources I'll talk about, when do you absolutely need to start seriously recruiting, seriously job searching, applying for positions, networking as part of your job search? And if you've never actually searched for a job before at all, or specifically here in the States, you want to give yourself more time. So maybe instead of the 6-month window, you're closer to the 9-month window. You also want to set benchmarks or targets for your search. So maybe that means, over the fall semester, you are sure to apply to 5 positions per week or more. Set those benchmarks for yourself. And I know that you all are busy, you're students, so you have to sort of balance out your job search with your courses. And the best way to do that, I think, is to just treat it as if it's a class or another obligation. So you can schedule time each week, whatever it takes for you to make smaller steps over the course of 6 to 9 months if you need it, so that you're seeing progress rather than putting it all off and giving yourself 2 months or 3 months right before graduation or right after graduation. I see that sometimes too. So it's helpful for you all to get a sense of when companies recruit. The way that companies recruit here in the US, especially when it comes to students, falls into generally one of 2 buckets. Either a company is doing early recruitment. So for example, the career fair last week, companies were and are engaging with students with next summer in mind, generally. That is early recruitment. So they're reaching out, having sessions, interviewing, making offers. There are lots of students who are getting offers in finance right now and consulting right now. They are getting those offers for May 2026 or later. Then there's immediate hire. So a company has a vacancy that they're seeking to fill as soon as possible. It's important for you to understand the differences because your work authorization, your CPT, your OPT, your academic training revolves around the academic schedule as well. So if you are planning to do a summer 2026 internship, then you shouldn't be recruiting for immediate hire roles. Sometimes it's difficult to tell the difference between the two, but some things that I recommend looking for, this is a screenshot from Handshake. So you notice here that the title says summer 2026. That's a giveaway, a very obvious giveaway. Not every position does that with the title, but this one does. It also has an apply by date that's in the future, pretty far into the future, January. So that's another sort of clue that this is not for right now. And then because this is an internship, you see that this is a full-time internship that starts in June and runs through August. So that's like extra obvious that this is not immediate hire. This is early recruitment for an internship next summer. So try to pay attention, especially in Handshake, because it actually provides some of these details. It always provides the deadline to apply. I was looking earlier today with a student at an immediate hire role that had an October application deadline. So try to pay attention and, try to gauge from the job description whether they're hiring for a future position or immediately, or try to clarify with the recruiter, the HR department at the company, or another contact that you make in the company. And I'll talk about how to make contacts in companies later on. Public job board, so not Handshake. Handshake is a job board that is used primarily by colleges and universities in the US and I think in Europe in some places. But job boards like LinkedIn or Indeed, they'll have a mix, but most of their positions, in my experience, are more immediate hire roles. And then I mentioned student recruitment usually revolves around the academic schedule. So I'm encouraging you to think 6 to 9 months ahead of time because that's how companies recruit. And sometimes it's even earlier than that, as I was mentioning. Okay, so I mentioned that fall is a busy recruitment time. It is, in fact, the busiest recruitment time. So there are more employers coming to campus for things like career fairs or company information sessions or in-person interviews, panels, alumni, networking events, and things like that. So you want to be on the lookout for all that's happening over the course of the fall semester. I'd say unless you're in like AAP, because most of their stuff happens in spring. Then you want to expect job offers for this coming summer to be later. So last year, maybe I should preface this. So last year, many or most employers were planning to give job offers kind of right away, like recruit primarily in the fall, give offers in the fall as well. But according to a survey of employers conducted recently by the National Association of Colleges and Employers for 2026 experiences, employers are planning to give offers later. I'm not 100% sure of exactly what that looks like, but you can pull up this report from NACE. It's public. I'll try to link it. If I can remember, I'll try to link it if you're really interested, but just Google NACE and go to their survey reports and you can find this and read all about how employers are planning to recruit this school year. This is a report from September 8th, so it's pretty new. So plan to engage with recruitment in the fall. You also want to get a sense of when industries actually recruit. So I encourage you all to think in terms of industries and job roles. Currently, well, industries, job roles, and then job types. So 3 factors to consider. Currently in the Career Development Toolkit, which is one of the resources that we have for students in Canvas, we have this chart of recruitment schedules for the main industries that we see Cornell students going into: pharmaceuticals and biotech, advertising, marketing, and public relations, engineering and technology, healthcare, real estate, law, unions and advocacy, etc. So this gives you a good sort of general sense. So we're in the fall right now, and everything exists in fall except government starts really late, non-government and planning. And then in January, art, media, entertainment, advertisement and PR, they recruit really late based on this last year. Architecture, so I mentioned AAP. Grade school education, so primary and secondary, not higher ed. Higher ed starts this fall. I mentioned government, NGOs, nonprofit, and then sustainability, conservation, unions, and advocacy. I see NGOs. I do want to point out like international affairs entities specifically. I've noticed they tend to recruit either on a rolling basis if it's full time. A lot of them do contract recruitment too to start before their internships. Those tend to be late. So right now we just kind of have everything lumped together and we don't differentiate between full-time roles and internships. Companies will do recruitment for what are called rotational programs, which I mentioned earlier. Those are kind of like post-grad internships that last 1 year, 18 months, 2 years. And it's you like literally moving around different departments within a company to get well acquainted. There's mentorship involved. It's kind of like an internship post-grad. So those tend to recruit in fall. Cohort style recruitment programs, like an analyst program with a consulting firm. You'll see a lot of those positions in fall. So you'll want to just check out this chart. I have it linked. I'll also mention that this is probably going to be updated around November, which feels a little late. But right now we're trying to separate internships from full-time because some industries will do internships in a certain period, full-time in another. It'll also give details that are more like degree level based. For example, consulting recruits bachelor's and master's students earlier than they do MBAs. Masters of Science students or Masters of Arts students with bachelor's earlier than MBAs. So there are those kind of details that help to figure out what you need personally and when you need to engage with recruitment. For now, I really like, because we don't have them separated, I really like the equivalent of this chart that Princeton and Columbia have. So if you just Google Princeton recruitment timelines or Columbia recruitment timelines, they actually separate out internships and full-time roles and give more context to each industry and how they recruit. So look for an updated version, but check out the toolkit too. And then as you're continuing to research those kind of timelines, it would be helpful for you to actually subscribe to career path pages on our website. Our website is career.cornell.edu. And in the menu, there's a menu option for exploring career paths. And you see here, there's a number of career paths, that we have. Sorry that some of them are cut off. But if you're an AAP, you probably want to subscribe to the Architecture, Planning, and Design career path. If you are an ILR, you might want to do law and human resources and human capital, maybe some social impact or government if you're interested in unions. So this gives you the chance to get notifications, even if it's for fields outside of your college. Let's say you're in arts and sciences, but you're interested in business, or you're in engineering, you're interested in consulting. then this helps you to get industry relevant updates, including events, job and internship postings, tools and resources like a technical interview preparation platform for technology and info science fields and computing versus a consulting case interview platform for people interested in consulting. So it'll give you those sort of curated resources and recommendations for that career path. Again, even if you're in a school where the emphasis may be on another industry. So these are really helpful sort of things. You can subscribe and get those updates straight to your inbox. You'll also want to reflect, I've hinted at some of this, on not just the industry itself, but what job role are you doing? For example, if you're in software engineering, you have options across a variety of industries. So you may decide, okay, I'm going to pursue big tech, but maybe as a backup, I'll do like finance and look at technical roles with banking entities, for example. So don't just think about the industry, but think about the job role and where those options may exist for you. Think about your degree level, how much experience you have. I know some of you are coming with work experience already, whereas others you don't have like that formal industry specific work experience. There are options for all of you. And then think about what standards have you set for yourself for the companies you're pursuing. Are you looking only at large brand name entities, or are you open to boutique firms or startups? So again, this is some sort of reflection. Be aware that the kind of brand names or well-known companies, they tend to recruit earlier because they want to they're sort of fighting for the best talent. So large banks, they're all kind of recruiting at the same time, and it's getting earlier and earlier and earlier depending on the role. So whereas boutique firms may have more of a rolling sort of recruitment schedule, and they may recruit later. So if you're at a point where maybe you're like, I'm kind of hearing about this consulting thing and I want to check it out, you've missed some very important deadlines over the summer and the first week of September. But smaller boutique firms or more specialized firms are still actually recruiting either through the end of September or rolling. So think in terms of that, like large reputable companies, or can you go boutique and still get really good experiences? Okay, now let's get into the meat of the international student job search experience. So this is something that I really nerd out over, and that is trying to pinpoint which companies are actually open to hiring international students. As you all said in your comments, we are in changing political policy times. And there are significant changes happening on the immigration policy front that are impacting employment as a whole. Much of the results of that are unknown. And there were two very significant announcements this week. So how do you still find international friendly opportunities in the midst of what's happening right now? Well, I've got some suggestions and things to try. Okay, so these are questions that you may want to think about, and questions that I'm always thinking about as I try to help students pinpoint international friendly opportunities. I sort of ask myself these three main questions. How can I find evidence of international friendliness? By asking myself, which companies are saying they will hire international students for current or future roles? Which companies have hired Cornell international students in the past, or other international students that you may know? Which companies have sponsored positions for relevant roles? of interest to you, and according to the experience level that you have, and job type. I feel like this is kind of repetitive. Which companies have sponsored relevant job roles by experience level and job type in the recent past? So that's kind of a mouthful, but I'll explain what I mean. There are lots of ways to find this evidence or find answers to these questions. The first tool to kind of help you do that is Handshake. As I mentioned, Handshake is our job board. So when a company wants to recruit a Cornell student, they come to our employee relations team, or they reach out to them and say, hey, I want to post these jobs. I've never recruited from Cornell before. Could you approve me to do that? Our employee relations team takes a closer look at them and says, absolutely, yes, you can, or maybe not, or we've got these questions where we need clarification. Handshake also has sort of their own vetting process where there are positions now that are sort of automatically approved through the platform as long as the company meets certain standards. So Handshake kind of brings together a ton of opportunities. There's over 100,000 job postings in Handshake today. And I think that number will increase as the semester goes on. But what I like most about Handshake is their work authorization filters. And we've added another resource to help international students. So the screenshots here are of those two things. Work authorization filters in Handshake are based on information. The information that you see is based on what the employer reports for the specific job opening. So when they post a position, as of fall 2024, they are now required to indicate whether that position is open to CPT, OPT. You can also consider academic training as similar and basically the same, or work visa sponsorship, or are they thinking that they're not requiring US work authorization, or is it a position that's outside of the US that doesn't require it? Or is it unpaid, which may not require it? Or do they not know? So they have the chance to respond to these questions, and the majority of responses fall within the first three buckets. So as you're using Handshake, you're in the job board, which I'm not showing you right now, but I'll probably pop into that later. You want to be applying these filters. Now, as a caveat, there are companies who post jobs in Handshake who have no clue what CPT and OPT are, or there are company representatives. So there may be someone at the company who is familiar, but the person posting the job may be a new recruiter, a rep from one of the departments or something, and they just may not have a clue. So it doesn't mean that you can't apply to positions that don't say we will sponsor, we're open to CPT or OPT, but what you are risking, I guess, if I can use that terminology, feels a little dramatic. But what you're risking is for that to be true. They don't actually take CPT or OPT or offer sponsorship. So I always recommend that as international students, you put the majority of your emphasis on positions that say that they are open. This is also extremely beneficial in times like these that are ever changing, because more of what I'll recommend later is based on what's been done in the past. But with policy shifting, it's just good to know which employers are still open to considering you as an international student. And Handshake is going to do that for you. There are other things that can help with that as well, but Handshake is one of the best resources that answer that question, that first question. Is this company willing to hire for future or current openings? Also in Handshake, we created this collection. It's employers who have hired international students from Cornell over the last 10 years. And this is based on data that is reported by students in their graduating semester or just after that semester. So it's not complete information because not everyone actually responds to this survey, but there's a lot of data that we do collect from students, and we work really hard to get those responses. So there are currently, so these are employers in Handshake. So it's not every employer who's ever hired an international student from Cornell. It's those who are approved in Handshake. And there's 639 of them. So there are a lot of employers that represent a variety of industries. What it doesn't provide for you, just because we're not ready to disclose that information at this time, is what are the exact titles, but it's a good starting point. So if you're in architecture and planning, well, you probably want to look at the architectural firms, right? Because they probably hired planners or architects from AAP at Cornell. If you are interested in consulting, the consulting firms are going to give you good leads. Whereas if you're interested in software engineering, you may fall in any of those industries, but you have a higher likelihood of being hired anyway. So some of the downsides I've kind of touched on, but additional ones, Handshake is not a comprehensive platform. So employers don't always post every job that's open with their company. A lot of times they may never post all of their openings that are relevant to students at Cornell. They may say, okay, Cornell's a target school. We're going to recruit from them for these openings specifically. And then every other opening can take public applications. Alternatively, or on another front, there are companies who won't post positions on their own website, but they will only post them in Handshake to their target schools. I see that a lot with smaller or boutique firms, especially. So you want to just use Handshake as much as you can. That's really my point. Also understand, as I mentioned, employers don't always understand what work authorization is, or they may say we're open to visa sponsorship when they really mean they're open to CPT because this is an internship. So I always recommend just checking all three of the first boxes. If a company says yes to one of these things, it doesn't make sense for them not to take CPT or OPT. Okay, so just assume that they may not know what they're talking about, but they're open to international students, and you can always clarify what they're willing to take as you move through the recruitment process. There are many upsides. I won't get into it, but some of them I've already touched on. Okay, so this is an example of a search. This is a administrator and training program. It's relevant to Brooks students in the Masters of Health Administration. It's a paid opportunity. You see here, it's eligible for sponsorship, and they're open to CPT or OPT. So you'll want to think about title, industry, degree level, internship, or full-time job, or something else. I was going to jump into Handshake with you, but we won't have time. So I'm going to skip this and just encourage you to look at Handshake on your own and try out these filters. The next platform is called Interstride. It is helpful to an extent, for finding companies who state within the job description that they're open to sponsorship or international students on CPT or OPT, for example. They have a filter that's dedicated to that, which I don't have pictured here, but it's in the job board. It also depends heavily upon historic H-1B sponsorship data, who has sponsored and hired international students. They have a page for CPT and OPT based on 2024 data. This comes from SEVIS by the Numbers, which is a report from our federal government of the top 200 CPT, OPT, and STEM OPT employers. It's going to be big names that you've probably heard of already. Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, etc. Large firms that have the expendable resources to sponsor. These screenshots are actually from a meeting that I had yesterday with a student who I believe, oh yes, they were looking for marketing analyst roles. So one feature in Interstride that I really like is their US Visa Insights page. The reason I like it is because you can sort of cut through the noise, like push aside all the software engineers and the data scientists and the business analysts, and find job titles with companies that have sponsored in the last 1 or 2 H-1B cycles and use that to build a target list. So they have a feature where you can export a list, pull a report, set your standards, and export a list. So maybe you want entry-level business analyst positions that were sponsored in 2025, this current cycle. And you want to see who those top employers are to help you have a starting point of target companies. Well, you can pull a list like that through through InterStride. That's extremely helpful. Their job board focuses on who are the top H-1B sponsors, who are cap exempt H-1B sponsors that don't have to go through the annual lottery, who has sponsored before, what positions are open to sponsorship, and things like that. So I'm kind of rushing through this, but InterStride is helpful. I think upsides of InterStride or fields that may be best suited for the InterStride job board, maybe I'll frame it like that. Definitely STEM, finance, and higher education tend to show up more in the results over on InterStride, whereas Handshake is more broad. Like if you're in any field, you'll probably find at least some openings in Handshake. InterStride can be frustrating to non-STEM students, non-finance, and those who are not seeking to go into higher ed. But the database of US Visa Insights can be helpful to anyone. All right. Vault, I'll do this quickly. Vault has an internship database that has a line that indicates whether different companies' internship programs are open to international students. So I encourage you all to check that out. The information is not always 100% accurate for every position. That's one thing that I've noticed just going through the different experiences and looking at company job boards. They may favor technical experiences over non-technical experiences for their internships. But Vault is helpful in their internship guide section. I'm a big fan of browser plugins too. So if you use LinkedIn, Indeed, Glassdoor, or Google has like a jobs tab, then some of these browser plugins actually work. There's one that works across all of the ones that I just mentioned. It's called FrogHire. I am not including these to endorse them because they're not endorsed by Cornell. InterStride has a plugin. It's not my favorite. I will say from my own personal use and experience, the FrogHire plugin offers the best features. All but InterStride have a package that charges a fee. From what I remember, definitely FrogHire does. It's like $10 a month. I can't remember how much the other two cost, but each of the 3 bottom ones have a free package and a premium package. And you can access certain features and not others if you do the free one. So check those out too. Wish I could show you because they're cool. Other ways to find evidence. We're talking about evidence, right? Like who will hire, who has hired from Cornell, and who has sponsored international talent or hired international talent before. There are other ways to get that information. An example, usually for large employers, is checking their early career pages as you're researching them. They may have an FAQ that addresses whether or not they hire international students or sponsor. This is a screenshot from Merck, and I've seen this on quite a few companies' early career pages. Also engaging through campus events that engage different companies. So at the career fair, we're trying to get better and better each year at confirming with employers whether or not they're open to international talent. I would say this year, the STEAM Fair was the best example of that. The other ones were a little challenging. And then what we did for the career fair is offered employers stickers to post at their booths that were globe stickers. And then we had a board at the entrance that provided a list of employers at the fair that indicated they were open to international talent. in their Handshake account. And then networking. So talking with international alumni from Cornell that you meet, or talking with upperclassmen who have already done internships if you're looking for an internship, and getting some leads that way. I have more on that later too, so I'll kind of rush through this. Here I am thinking I have plenty of time. Okay, so you want to iron out or settle on a strategy that's useful for you. So, from my perspective, the top priority is focusing in on companies that are indicating that they will hire international students. I think that's especially important in the current climate and immigration policy. With all that's changing, having that additional reassurance that they're still open to international talent will really help reassure you that that's a good option for you moving forward. I went over tools, Handshake work authorization filters, Vault, InnerStride, and FrogHire, which is a browser plugin. Both have kind of a sponsorship eligible feature. And sometimes job descriptions say so. The FAQ on the company website may say so, or a recruiter representative may confirm that for you. So you have that confirmation. That's the best thing. The second best thing is based on sponsorship history. So if a company was willing to go as far as to sponsor a work visa, they, especially for entry level or level 2 salary roles, bachelor's, sometimes postdocs, and master's students, then they may be willing to continue down that path given the state of our current situation. That can be helpful for you. Here are tools. And there's more than just InnerStride. There's a database that I really like using called H1B Grader. There's My Visa Jobs. So again, I'll send out these slides so you'll have them. Networking can also help you figure out, okay, this is an international alum who is serving on a panel and they work for X company. That's confirmation for me. Also, what I don't have listed here is the Cornell has hired Cornell students collection in Handshake. 639 companies who have hired international students from our institution. And then for me, the last priority are employers where their hiring practices are just not clear. I usually recommend that students don't waste too much time pursuing those opportunities if there are other opportunities with companies that fall into the first two buckets, especially if evidence suggests that they don't sponsor or they don't hire international talent for roles that you yourself are interested in or qualified for. Why waste your time over there if you have evidence for other companies that confirm that they are international friendly? Some of the risks of pursuing these experiences where it's unclear is you may end up sort of bearing the brunt of convincing them to hire you on OPT, which is fine if that is work that you want to do, explaining a lot what that process may look like. Or I've heard some students being asked by startups, okay, you go figure out the whole work visa sponsorship thing and just let me know what I need to do. No, the employer should be engaged. They should hire an immigration attorney to guide them. They may try and push that work off on you, and that's a risk that you probably don't want to take. And if they're saying, oh, you do it, it just makes me wonder, are they committed to sponsoring you in the first place, you know? And will they be an employer who looks out for you as an international employee? I have my doubts. And then they just lack familiarity potentially with what it's like to hire international talent and what they're committing to. Some of the advantages, so it doesn't mean don't pursue any of these opportunities. These employers may very well be open to hiring you, willing to learn, committed, willing to hire professionals who understand what the process is about. And there may be less competition for international talent for some of these employers who don't have that history of sponsorship. So don't write them off, just don't make them your top priority. There's a lot of text on here, but I have two different examples of how you might navigate these priorities. So if you're in a STEM career path, you probably have more options overall because that is where the most shortages in the US workforce are. It's in STEM, technical, highly specialized kinds of fields. So you're probably going to come across more opportunities in Handshake. You probably have access to lots of sponsorship data for technical roles. Those companies probably have statements on their websites confirming they're willing to sponsor or hire international students. Even employers who have a general no sponsorship policy may be more willing to hire these technical roles. And often STEM students can more easily find those international friendly options while putting less effort and doing less research. You can use Handshake, you can use H-1B history, you can apply to more positions where you're not sure because there's that demand. And companies are likely more familiar with international student work permits, such as CPT and OPT and academic training. Usually CPT and OPT, because that's just the most common, because most international students are F1. If you're a non-STEM student, then you're probably going to encounter companies or hiring teams that are less familiar or less likely to hire or sponsor non-STEM. They may be open still to OPT because they don't sponsor OPT. It's provided through your student visa. You may find that your job search is more challenging, but it's not impossible to find employers who are really willing to sponsor. I just have a caveat here that our immigration policies are changing and they may change how employers approach hiring over the next year, as long as that 100K fee is in place. If it goes through and is actually implemented. I'm saying goes through, it's an executive order, but if it's actually implemented, there are some lawsuits in the works right now. You're also likely to find Handshake and networking to be more useful and informative to you about what your options are. So engaging as much as you can with campus recruitment, events, career fairs, information sessions, networking events, having that kind of personal touch may better help you pinpoint options that are open to you. You may be more likely to need to explain your work authorization to more employers, especially if you're looking at smaller companies. And then you may find options off the beaten path, is a saying, old saying, at least here in the US. So boutique companies, more on the startup side, and kind of non-traditional paths. Not to say that's always the case, but it's more likely that you find less opportunities in large companies and more in the smaller companies or non-traditional paths. All right, so let's talk about executing your search. All right, so one of the most common questions I get from international students is, how do I approach job application questions about my work authorization? If it asks me, am I legally authorized to work in the US? Yes, you are. And the reason for that is because you have at least temporary work authorization through CPT, OPT, the STEM OPT extension, or academic training. So yes, absolutely yes. Now, for the question that asks, will you now or in the future need sponsorship? Generally, our guidance, Cornell guidance in career services and international services, is to answer yes to this as well. However, not every company treats that question the same. So you may actually have guidance in the job description or hear from a recruiter or get a question back from a recruiter after applying, where their guidance may be to actually say no because it's an internship. If it's for a full-time role with no end date, yes is the better answer. I won't even say probably. It's definitely the better answer because your work authorization is temporary. Now, there may be exceptions. Generally, for me, as someone who worked on the sort of immigration side of international student advising, I know that international students sometimes are working on their own paths. So they may be getting married, or they may have family members in the US who are sponsoring them. and they've been working with an immigration attorney who's reassured them that their prospects for a work visa that doesn't require employer sponsorship because it's self-sponsored, or a family-sponsored visa or green card is a strong option for them. They've started the process already. They're in the works. They have an idea of their timeline to approval, and they expect approval before graduation or before their OPT period ends or whatever. Therefore, they don't need employer sponsorship. And absolutely, you can answer no. But for the majority of international students who aren't going through processes on their own to stay, then yes is the better answer, unless they have been directed to say otherwise. There are lots of concerns that I also hear from students about being rejected. Like, if I answer, yes, I need sponsorship, will this company automatically reject me and reject my application? My perspective on this is that is a possibility. And that is why I recommend looking for that evidence first and then moving forward with your applications. I understand that that can take more time, especially if you're looking into past H-1B data. If you're using Handshake and you see some openings that say open to CPT, OPT, or sponsorship, why not apply for those first, right? And notate that, keep a spreadsheet tracking your applications, for example, and just notate that Handshake says yes, CPT, or something like that. So look for that evidence first, and then be ready to discuss your work authorization as early as you feel comfortable with an employer. So maybe that's with the recruiter. They're not on the hiring team, but they're giving you information. They can clarify that for you, especially if they work in HR. Maybe that's in an interview with the hiring team or the hiring manager. But absolutely, whatever you decide to do, please do have that discussion about you having a work permit through your student visa before you accept an offer. The reason why I recommend that is because I've seen students get their offers rescinded. I think about one per year since I started working with Cornell. That happens because they kind of kept that information private until after accepting the offer, and they didn't sort of do their homework in the beginning to determine, is that an international friendly employer in the first place, or talk with them or try to explain to them what it would look like to hire them. Generally, hiding your temporary work authorization is not the solution. That's what I'm saying here. So ideally, from my perspective, it's better to be upfront and confidently communicating what your student visa allows you to do. And we actually have scripts, which I can link in here before sending this to you as well. We have scripts in the Career Development Toolkit that provides language that you can use to explain. So my student visa provides permission for me to participate in this internship without company sponsorship. Are you willing to consider me as an applicant, as an example? I've also heard employers explicitly state that they look negatively upon applicants who hide that they have temporary work authorization until after accepting an offer. They feel like it's being dishonest. So just be careful about that. Okay, now you'll want to also think beyond job application. So more than just being a person on paper, what else are you doing to engage with a company and demonstrate your candidacy as like strong and competitive? Well, networking and recruitment events, I've sort of mentioned these several times. Preparing well for interviews, so putting together your professional story really well and knowing how to communicate that clearly, marketing yourself well, like putting together a really good LinkedIn page or Handshake page that recruiters see is sort of your brand, your professional brand. Even though this is interview prep, I'm also touching on that a little bit. And then also getting a sense of what questions to expect in an interview, especially if you've not done an interview before or you've not done an American style interview before. Then doing practice sessions with the Central Career Services Office is a good way to go, or using our interview practice platform called Big Interview that kind of goes over common interview questions to expect. As much as you can practice, that will not only, right, we're talking about finding opportunities that are open to international students, but that's like step one of the process. You got to perform well in an interview. You got to present yourself well on paper. So the process is kind of like step by step. Are you succeeding through that process step by step by being prepared for those points in your recruitment process? And then troubleshooting. So tracking your job applications, tracking your progress, revisiting, troubleshooting if there's something going on that may be hindering your ability to move forward in a search. You should probably connect with career services to talk about that, to revisit your strategy. I met with a student today and I'm like, yeah, you should probably start back with having your resume looked at because you've never done that before, and setting up your LinkedIn Handshake profiles, and then move forward with applying for positions. So ask for help, seek out help from career services, and we're more than happy to do that. I do have this screenshot here referring to recruitment events. So in Handshake, we have a ton of recruitment events happening throughout the year, but especially in fall. Fall is the busiest recruitment season. And we're talking about going beyond job applications. So think of this as like being more than just a candidate on paper. You want to, as much as you can, make those in-person impressions with employers and know how to confidently share your story. Also use it as a learning experience. How do they recruit? What opportunities are available? What are the dates that you can expect those postings to be available? Where will they be? Will they be in Handshake? Will they be on the company website? Do you need to email your resume to someone? You can learn so much information just by going to these recruitment events. And there's a variety happening. You see consulting, you see banking, you see, what else we have here? I think I have manufacturing and food science. MathWorks, which I think is consulting, I can't remember. You have biotech, etc. You have Disney, that's like the entertainment comms. So there's a variety of opportunities in Handshake. There's pharmaceuticals. I see Merck in there. So just look through Handshake and also subscribe to those career path pages on our website that I talked about several slides ago. And then with networking, I'm not actually going to go through networking strategies. It's kind of its own full presentation. There is a recording on our website where I presented on international student networking strategies. But this is like a who can you network with kind of slide. So think about the ways that various connections that you do have or can easily make can help you progress in your search. So your professors are a great resource along with your peers. I talked about talking with peers who have interned other places, who might be further along in their experience. And these are quotes from students that I've worked with over my time at Cornell. So, or this is actually from a panel from international organizations, but all three of the panelists at this particular event said, I got my internship at World Bank because I reached out to a professor. They connected me to someone who was retired from World Bank or UNDP, and that's how I got my internship. So just know that your professors and your peers today are your professional peers of your future. So think about how you can leverage those relationships to lead to referrals or connections with professionals in industry. Professors are great resources for that, and your peers can be helpful as well. Cornell alumni are very, very willing to give back to current Cornell students. So you can look for events where we're bringing Cornell alumni back to campus. It happens all the time. Is there a guest presenter that's presenting in your department? Is there a panel happening through your career services office? Is there a networking event? Are you an athlete? Can you engage with the alumni networking events or resources? you can find all of these in Handshake. As I mentioned, that's what the screenshot was before. And then you can use platforms like CU eLinks, which is our internal networking platform, or LinkedIn. This is from a student that is doing really well in their career development. They've had internships every year. They're undergraduate. I think they're AIM, but they're doing real estate. And they attended a networking mixer kind of event with alumni and sat at a table with an alum who referred all of them to interview for a position. So those, again, those in-person interactions are so valuable. And then fellow international students, alumni, and professionals from your home country. So you all have shared language, shared customs, shared experiences. And as much as you can use those resources, those are great connections. So another student I worked with had a former high school classmate who worked for a luxury fashion brand and was able to give them insights into their recruitment experience. They're actually the same person. That's an example for the next one. That person also did an internship in New York City where their supervisor's supervisor used to work for this luxury fashion brand. And they were able to refer them, so they got invited to an exclusive career fair just for that company. And that got them into their interview process. So think of your network as just connections to experiences that you're looking for, and try to build that network. I know many of you are new. Most of you are probably new here to the States, but as much as you can meet more people, more professionals, the better off you'll be professionally from a holistic standpoint. Almost done. And then maybe we'll have 5 minutes for questions. So I do want to refer back to this kind of massive elephant in the room, this big issue that's existing right now in immigration policy impacting international students. There are changes ahead and anticipated now for the H-1B that I won't go into. I don't want to provide guidance there, but I will encourage you all to register for and attend the Visas After Graduation workshop next week. That is hosted by International Services, and they will have an immigration attorney from Miller Mayer who will provide an overview of work visas, family-based visas that one could transition to after graduating or even before graduating for some of them. So if you want that overview, they do take time, a lot of time to go through the H-1B, and I would be so surprised if they didn't touch on what's happening and what they're anticipating for the next H-1B lottery. I also encourage you all, as you're doing, to continue to watch policy changes and updates. And I have 2 recommended reputable resources just because there's a lot of conflicting information out there, some erroneous information. So check these out and continue to pursue your goals, and just know that Cornell Career Services especially is watching the developments. I know our International Services Office is as well. And we understand that there are potential impacts for international students. And just know that we are here to support you as you continue your job search. And we're doing our best to provide opportunities that are open to you. So just continue to work with us. And if you just need to vent, we are here to show you support during this time. And then the last thing is, generally, I always recommend contingency planning, but especially now with all this going on, you want to give yourself more options. And that may look different for each of you. You are your own person, but think in terms of, in a perfect world, here is what I'm going for. Is there something that's like just beneath that is okay for me? It's an acceptable scenario that I can pursue, that I would be comfortable with. Maybe that's, pursuing, what is it, FONG, I think is the word for the big tech firms. Maybe that's like your dream. What is next to that or just under that? Maybe that's looking in alternative industries for similar roles. Maybe that's going really hard in your search for US experiences, but having some backup options back home. Or maybe that's pursuing options in Canada, or the UK or somewhere else. So think of those contingency plans in terms of tiers. Like, this is the ultimate perfect goal, and then here's what I'm willing to do in place of that. Also looking for temporary job options that qualify for OPT, which I kind of talked about in slide number 5. I won't go through again, but look at all of your options for OPT. That's a great strategy, especially if you're approaching graduation. Maybe you graduate this December and you haven't found a job yet. You want to stay within the restrictions of your visa and consider alternatives that you can do while you're still searching for that position, that sort of dream position. And remember that, one, you can change jobs while you're on CPT and OPT and academic training. It's very hard for academic training because you can't be unemployed at all. But you don't have to be 100% committed to a position for your entire work authorization period. And then your first job post-grad, especially, is not your forever job. Certainly any internships you do, that's not necessarily your forever job. It may be good for your resume. It may be good professional experience. It may be good to get oriented to the American workforce. So just know that that's not the end of your future. And then, as much as you are comfortable, I encourage you all to be open to non-US options, especially for the long term, if things do go the way that our government is hoping that they will. We are incorporating global webinars or recruitment events. There's one focused on Japan that's coming up next Friday. We just heard from a group focused on mainland China. We've engaged with a group focused on internships in Hong Kong with startups. And then I have a guest presenter who's going to present on UK visas. Connect with Career Services, take a headshot photo, and then hear our upcoming workshop. Remember, I will email you all these slides. Toolkit, follow us. Please do the feedback survey, which I will email you about. And I have 5 minutes for questions. So feel free to unmute or put your questions in the chat. I do see one already. Okay. So, do internship applications include recommendation letters, or is that a part that comes in on further stages of recruitment? As a sophomore who's looking for applying for internships for summer 2020, sorry. Oh shoot, hold on. I just closed the chat. Summer 2026 already. Should I be reaching out to professors or previous employers already? Do these recommenders have to upload the recommendation letter themselves for every single opportunity, or can I upload them? Okay, so usually for jobs in the US, instead of letters of recommendation in the job search, we call them references, not referrals. References, recommendations, referrals, references. Sorry. So usually when you're filling out a job application, there's a spot for you to include references. Back in my day, we used to include like a note on the bottom of a resume that says references available upon request. Some employers will ask you to submit an attachment of resumes instead of inputting them into your job application. But usually you report your references, the people, which may be, 2 or 3 people usually. Sometimes it's more than that. Can get kind of crazy depending on the employer, but you usually report that at the time that you apply, or they will ask for it after you apply. So usually if you're actively job seeking, what's considered common courtesy is to give a heads up to anyone that you are expecting to provide a reference for you. One, so they know that they may be called or emailed, and then the employer may take different approaches to actually getting that reference. So they may use a system that triggers an email where they have to type up a statement or answer a series of questions in like a survey format. Or they may actually call and have a conversation with them about who you are as a candidate. Okay, another question. If I graduate this December and I need more time to find jobs, can I take an unpaid position as an RA at Cornell? How do I approach it? So you may be able to. I have talked with one student recently who is doing an unpaid RA position. The challenge with this is Cornell is also experiencing significant financial strain that's affecting research on campus. So the way to approach it would be to identify a professor that knows you, ideally, that you've taken courses with, and let them know that you are looking for a research experience for OPT. You need to do so for at least 20 hours per week. And they may very well be willing to work with you. There are a lot of international students that do that very thing and have done that here at Cornell and other institutions where I've worked. So that's a great option, as long as it works out. There are others who kind of lean in on the contract role, depending on what you're studying, contract option. So I worked with a student in spring who now has an offer, has a job that they got offered, but they were doing contract-based GIS work through a tool called, it may have been Upwork, or I forget the other ones, but there are these like platforms that are meant to get someone to do a project for you. And I didn't put them in the slides because I didn't go into all the details of employment options and where to find them. Maybe someday I may be doing a presentation like that for Interstride in the spring. But Upwork and the other one whose name I'm forgetting are more focused on gigs. So if you're the type of person that maybe you do social media management because you were a comms major, or maybe you are doing software engineering and you want to do some website building for people, you could do that through like sort of work for hire or gigs, using a site like Upwork. How would I be able to schedule a meeting with you to talk about internship opportunities in Europe or Asia? If you go to career.cornell.edu/schedule, you want to select Barnes Hall, which is the central office, and then select International Student Support as the appointment type. And that's how you get on my calendar. If you have any issues, just email me. My email address, let me put it in the chat, is ef434@cornell.edu. I have two questions. One, can you show the workshop schedule slide again? Yes, I can. So I can take a photo of it. Absolutely. And these workshops can be found on the Career Services website on the International Student page. Hold on. There we go. Number two, I heard that students have to check zip codes, yes, to see which specific category, STEM, non-STEM, their major belongs to, yes. What are some ways to check the type of my major? So if you have a major declared, if you're not like a first or second year student in arts and sciences, you should have a major declared and it should be printed on your I-20. So in the like second or third box, there's the name of your major, and then there's like a 6-digit code with a period in the middle of it somewhere. So you take that code and you just Google STEM OPT codes or STEM OPT lists. The name of the page is like DHS designated STEM programs for optional practical training or something like that. It's a really long name. But if you just Google CIP code STEM, it'll get you there. So as long as you can pull up that page, refer back to your I-20 document and punch in that code to find it. Because this might be tricky for majors that are more interdisciplinary. Yeah. So you can check that. The thing with the majors on the I-20 is the names don't always perfectly match what you're studying unless it's like a standard, like psychology or math or business administration. But then there are some programs where they'll kind of pick whatever's closest to whatever major code is closest to the name of the major, the type of the major at Cornell. In fact, most schools, at least universities, sort of have a reference list that's, and I think New York State functions this way, where they sort of use a list that's approved by the state or an accrediting body. So anyhow, I don't want to get too much into that, but the SIC code and the name of the major, specifically the name of the major on your I-20, may not be the exact same name that's used for your program here at Cornell, because it's like a limited number of categories that, and it's really used to sort of organize or categorize majors across different universities in the US. While I wait, I will explain these events here. So the Visas After Graduation is featuring an immigration attorney. I explained that. The virtual STEM fair is coming up on October 8th. You should sign up. You have to actually sign up for individual sessions with employers, which could be one-on-ones or group sessions. I have a Q&A coming up with International Services that's going to cover CPT, OPT, and J1 academic training in more detail, plus the STEM extension, and then a UK visas for Ivy Plus students, October 24th. Thank you all. This is fun. So enjoy the rest of your Friday night. And hopefully I'll see you. Oh, I didn't put my panel on here. I have a panel on Tuesday, but you all have been getting my emails. There's like 200 students registered, but I do have two companies, New York Life, which is an insurance company, a financial sort of company, and Alpha Sites, which is kind of like a consulting firm, but its own thing. And they will talk about how they approach hiring international students. So they will speak on a panel for me next Tuesday evening. If you're interested, you can find it in Handshake, and I'll try to send links for that in my confirmation email. All right, with that, I am going to end this.